Good morning, everyone. Good to see you this morning. Dan, Danny, and I just sitting around drinking some coffee. Dan's getting ready to set the broadcast, and as he does that, make sure you check out the comments section, put in any questions you might have as we go through this morning. Any questions, comments, anything like that, make sure you put them in the comments box. So we can
let us know where you're joining in from. I hope everyone's having a good morning or evening, depending on where you're at. And we'll get started here in just a second. Dan is working on getting everything launched and set up. So bear with us if we've got any technical difficulties, but we'll be up and rolling in just a few minutes. And again, as you're joining us and kind of dialing in or clicking in, let us know in the comment section where you're from. And throughout this interactive conversation that we want to have today, we're going to do a little round panel discussion, but just let us know if you have questions or requests to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the conversation. We definitely want this to be interactive, so ask your questions, give us topic suggestions in the comments box so we can cover those in more detail and make sure that you all are getting the most out of this conversation that you can today. We're planning to talk about a little look back on 2018 and some key lessons learned, and then we'll get into our 2019 kind of goal setting and planning session. We're down here in Florida, staying at the beach house this weekend, working through some things and really looking forward to what we've got ahead of us in 2019 and how we've achieved some of the goals that we've set out to accomplish thus far. And then we'll really get into kind of what we're looking ahead to do in 2019 as well. So how, not only what a goal may be, but how we plan to accomplish it and the actionable steps that we take and you all can take to improve your business and really jumpstart and have a great 2019 ahead. And so thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and what we're calling our 2019 roundtable discussion. As you're joining us or clicking in, please let us know where you're dialing in or joining us from. In the comments section, let us know the country and the city that you're dialing in from. And if you're here in the U.S., let us know the city and state that you're joining us from.
So we got several people joining us. We got Lisa from Detroit, Michigan. Thank you for joining us there. James from Greeley, Colorado. Stephen from New Jersey. Cheryl from Atlanta, Georgia. Peter in Richmond, Virginia. And we have Vince from Troy, Michigan. Got Boston, Manny over there from Boston. Whitney, nice to see you there, Whitney. Got Vince is on here as well. Eric from DC, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate you spending some time with us on a Saturday morning. And let's see, got Paul from Long Island, New York, and Noah from Michigan as well. Got Joe from Orlando, Andy from Atlanta, Nate from Detroit. Got a lot of people joining us. We have had over 100 people register for this webinar, even though we just announced it late last night. We appreciate everybody being responsive and being able to join us here. And so we have all the technology set up, so we should be good. And Danny kind of gave a little bit of an introduction of what we're planning on doing today on the webinar. And really, it's more of a roundtable discussion about 2019, and also kind of talking a little bit about what we learned in 2018. And what I want you to do right now is, you guys have obviously found the chat box on the Zoom platform, but also try to find the Q&A box on the platform as well, because we're going to be having this as an interactive discussion. And so as we're going through some of the material and some of the content, you guys can submit some of your questions or some feedback, and then we can kind of dialogue back and forth while we're all three together here. So I want to go ahead and get us started and talk about the first thing we're going to talk about is some of the lessons that we learned in 2018. So do you want to go ahead and start us off, Brandon?
Sure. So, we're here in Florida meeting at a nice location to get together and collaborate together as a team. And one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is the importance of strong team members and knowing what your role is in that team. And I think that we all bring different strengths. But I think the important part of being part of a strong team is not necessarily knowing your strength, but understanding what your weakness is. So really being able to self-reflect and being able to delegate out tasks that you just understand you're not as good at or may not enjoy as much, whereas one of the other team members may be very, very good at that. That's your strong point. And you have to be okay with that. Like, you can't do everything. We all understand that. But we have people on our team, Dan and Danny and I, that are better at things than I am. And so we've broken down those. We all
a lot better than you are.
That's right. Yeah. And something that he's a lot worse at. So
both ways. I mean,
we all know that. And so, we've broken that down that way, and it works really, really well. And a little bit later, we'll talk about how, what we're going to do, moving into 2019 to make what I've learned in 2018 about the importance of a strong team, and what am I going to do this year to make that even better, and how those roles are. And we talk often, I know everybody knows the term, but lanes, right? Everybody has their lane. And so we all know what our lane is, and that's come very organically, I feel. We just know what we bring to the table.
And we just had this discussion when we were setting up all this video equipment to have this broadcast today. Brandon had a few little inputs on various things, and I was like, stay in your lane.
And I said, this is not my lane. But I mean, we all know Dan likes to talk a lot, so we know this is his lane, right? So we let him have that. So that is one thing that I learned, is just the importance of a strong team, and being able to really self-reflect and not know your strength necessarily. That's important, but know where your weaknesses are. And I think a lot of people fail to do that. So.
Well, I think in finding people that can help balance you out, I think that you should still be able to do the tasks that they are doing, because you can put yourself in their shoes and kind of see from their mindset and what they're doing and how it's actually happening. But if for some reason something happens to that person, you might have to step in. But I think it also gives you an appreciation for what they are doing, because as we're putting deals together and putting offers on deals and, going and touring properties and, closing deals and all that kind of stuff, we really sit back and kind of reflect and go, man, I am so glad that Brandon does what he does. And I'm so glad that Danny does what he does. And I like what I'm doing, but I could do their jobs, but not as effectively, and also do what I like to do. And so to have those team members that can help balance you out, yes, you're going to share more in your percentage of your property or whatever from the sponsorship side. But I will also tell you that if you try to do it on your own, the problem there is that you have no scalability with that. So you can only do one deal at a time. It's very hard as just a single person to do all the different pieces and nuances and keep all the plates spinning on finding the next deal, closing the deal you're doing now, finding new investors, talking to investors about the deal you're getting ready to close and you're raising money for it. There's just so many different pieces and moving parts that it's very hard. And for those of you who might not know a lot about us, we do multifamily syndication in 100, 150 units or more. Minimum about 10 million is what we're looking for as far as acquisitions. And so obviously we're playing in a different space than maybe some of you. Like maybe you guys want to do a smaller unit, like a duplex, or maybe like a 20 or 30 unit or a 40 or 50 unit. And so there's a difference in mentality when you're doing that kind of a property. And you may not need as big of a team that we have to be able to do that in the beginning. So you got to kind of get your feet wet and kind of do a few things if that's what you choose to do. But if you join a team that is together, then I feel like you could scale a lot faster, and you can also kind of ride the coattails, if you will, of somebody else who's already been doing some deals and really get the experience yourself until you want to go out or whatever, because you don't always have to start with a small unit.
Right. Now, Danny, would you say that when we say lanes, though, that's not a lane? In other words, I am oblivious to what's going on in the other lane, right? How do you feel about like crossovers? It's not like dividers or walls. Do you feel that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the importance of kind of some of the lessons that we learned in 2018 was how to work together. And it is an evolutionary role and position where, each day we communicate better and really try to grow and improve how we're functioning and how we operate and the efficiency of not only the business aspect, but the communication aspect and the people aspect, and how we can improve and help everyone along the way. And so, you know, one of the favorite books that I'm reading right now is the story of Sam Walton. And we all think about Walmart and how there's, I don't even know, thousands of stores. Well, guess what? He started with one store. He did everything, right? He had, I think, 6 or 7 stores before he hired his first manager. And, you know, I just look at what he has done, and reading his biography, it's really great to understand, you know, as Dan said, we can all do the roles, but there's no way that I can do what Dan does for us as good as he can, and what Brandon does as good as he can. And so I think, you know, it's important to understand, and as you asked, you know, what it is that we do and how we grow. I think, yeah, you're absolutely right that, you know, we can balance each other out, and also, you know, don't be overwhelmed if you're thinking like, I need to get these partners or other people involved. You know, learn and grow, and as you expand as an individual, I think your sphere of influence also comes around to you to get you to that next level.
Well, and I think that's a great segue into the topic of some of the lessons that, you know, have been learned in 2018 when it has to do with networking. You know, I think networking is a very vital piece to any type of endeavor that you're working with, especially when you're trying to look for or build a team. You know, I don't think, well, I know that we wouldn't be here today if we didn't get out of our comfort zone and go and network and go and meet people, and, you know, and actually be seeking that partnership or that piece. You know, a year ago, I didn't know that this was how it was all going to play out, but we have a very solid team. And it was because all 3 of us took the opportunity to go out of our comfort zone, go meet new people, and go network, and then ask some hard questions, gone back and forth to see if they'd be a good fit. And the thing is you're not always going to find someone the first time you meet them and it's going to be a good fit. You want to hold out for that right person. It took months for us to be able to find each other and really feel comfortable with each other to actually want to move forward in some form or fashion of a partnership. So I think from a networking standpoint, the in-person networking is very vital, which is why with the Multifamily Investor Nation, I have all these meetup groups. We now have almost 50 meetup groups across the country in almost every major market in the United States. I have over 2,500 members across those 50 groups. And those groups are created to be able to have that constant local networking opportunities for people in your own backyard. And we also have networking opportunities that are created around different events around the country as well. But going to an event is very good as well. I went to several. I know all 3 of us went to several events in 2018, and you have to go to these events with a goal in mind. You know, you want to be able to, when I go to an event, my goal is to at least meet one person that I didn't meet before that can change me moving forward. And then the second thing I look for is a golden nugget within the material or the content that is being presented. Now, if I can find that one golden nugget that can change my, you know, future, that's really what I'm looking for. Because you go to some of these events, and a lot of the content is fairly similar. I'm not going to say it's the same, but it's similar. And what I mean by that is everybody's going to have a little bit of a spin or nuance in how they do things, but the gist of a lot of the content is very similar. But it's that one little golden nugget that you find in that all that material that makes you go, aha, and you can actually change something that you're currently working on.
So Dan, you know, I'm thinking something important that everyone probably wants to know is, you know, you go to this event and there's a couple hundred people there, and let's say I'm an apartment syndicator and I want to meet someone to add value to my business. How would you approach going into a room with 200 plus people to find what you said, that one person to add value each day? So, you know, what are the kind of rough numbers? Are you meeting like 20 people and you're going to have surface level conversations with 10, and then you'll have deep conversations with 10, and you're going to identify that one person out of those 20. And what are you going to ask those people that you have a deep conversation with to see how they would fit into your goal of being an apartment syndicator?
So you can tell he's a financial analyst. He wants the numbers and the specifics and the steps. And I was just thinking about that as he was saying that. So I would say that when I go to a networking event, I'm not looking for somebody to add value to me. I'm looking for people to add value to.
Okay.
And in return for adding value to somebody else, that will organically come. So I think it's a little bit about your purpose, because I think people can sense the fact if you're just seeking something. Because I think we've all been to an event where somebody is coming around, shoving a business card in your face and trying to, really get in front of you. And I think that's a little bit more abrasive. And it's almost like, hey, look at me versus, trying to figure out where they are and where you can help them and benefit them. And it kind of comes back to you organically.
So what would you say are like 2 traits that you look for in a person that you want to add value to and build a relationship with? So again, we're kind of looking at that pool. There's a couple hundred people. You're probably going to meet 20 people in a day. And, who's that one person and what draws you to them? So the listeners and everybody joining us today can understand when they go to their next conference, what do they do to find that person?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's, for me, I don't have that criteria because I don't know sometimes what I'm looking for or what it is that they are going to provide or I can provide to them. So I'm looking for opportunities to meet people and start a conversation. And during that conversation, figuring out where they are at and if there's any way for us to be able to collaborate. So, and it's not necessarily just collaboration, but obviously being able to give them some insight or give them some feedback. And, I think when you go to an event, what I have found to be effective is going to an event, and several of you that have met me at events know this, is, I will try to reach out to people that I know are going to the event before I get there and set some time aside and have them schedule some time so we can have that time to sit down and talk, whether it be at a breakfast in the morning before the sessions get started or during one of the breaks, or, if I know that what the topic schedule, what the schedule is during the event, I might block off an hour during a session that I might not necessarily be interested in and have some time to be able to, schedule some of that stuff out. So I'm almost, I'm forcing myself to make sure that I'm doing that networking by scheduling ahead of time. But even at the event, if you don't schedule it ahead of time, being able to block off certain times, like every time you go to breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you should not be eating by yourself. You should be eating with somebody else. You shouldn't go to your hotel room at lunch and eat lunch. You shouldn't go there at night. You should be out there networking and making the most use of that time. Because I look at it all at the same time and go, if I don't do that, I'm being selfish of my own time.
Right.
Because I'm there and they're there to meet each other and network. And if I'm just going up to my hotel room, I'm being selfish.
Yeah.
You could have provided some value to somebody there and they didn't get that value. But to talk about the criteria, sometimes that's difficult to say, I need this criteria, because sometimes you don't know what you're going to need later on. Because we've all met people at conferences, and we've got the contact, and then on down the road, it's just an organic, it just comes together, and we're like, hey man, remember we met that person at that conference and look at what they provided here. We didn't even realize that was going to happen. But it's just getting to know the people in the space. And then, because we met at a point in time and we didn't at that point in time say, I'm looking for a partner.
Right.
And like an interview, It's just getting to know people, finding out what their needs are, finding out what they want. And then,
and it sounds like if I could put, a couple numbers on this, as the finance person that I want to do, I want to do, to give you some actionable things, I'm going to say 2 things. So number 1, the piece that you need to do is show up for yourself at that conference and be willing and ready and active in participating and just meeting new people without an agenda tied to it, right? So I'm going in with an open mind. I'm going to say, hey, I'm Danny Randazzo. It's a pleasure to meet you. What do you focus on? Let's just have a conversation. So that would be number one. Go in with an open mind and participate in as many things as you can. Number two, I would say, is you want to look for a person to have a conversation with who is just as eager and motivated to be there as you, and you just get to know them through a 5-minute conversation. And I think naturally and organically that conversation will, take you places where you're ready to go, and it will naturally happen as to, where you go from there.
No, I think that's a very important thing to do is making sure that you, like for example, I don't go to an event and say, I want to meet 20 people. I go to an event and say, I want to meet people. Now, that doesn't mean that my way is right or wrong. I mean, for somebody else that wants to set that as a standard of, like, you being a financial analyst and the numbers guy, you're like, I want to meet 20 people. Okay, that's great. You check your box and pull out your iPad after you met somebody and check your little thing and say, I met that about number 4. I got 16 more.
Here we go.
And that's why everybody's a little bit different. But I think just the purpose of this, this type of a session that we're doing is just to give you ideas, give you strategies that, we're using in our own, business, so that you can say, hey, what are they doing? Let me see, maybe if I can try some of that in my own life and my own business and my own, syndication business or whatever, and see how that helps. So I know that Jamie Arnold asked a question on here about, what are 5 events that you would recommend in 2019? And so right now, what my goal is to go as to many of them as possible. So when you say what are the best ones are the ones where people are, right? And so to be able to go to an event is very important. Now, obviously, a lot of you have already registered for our event coming up in a couple of weeks, which is the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. It's an online virtual summit, a virtual event. So you're not doing any in-person networking while you're sitting in front of your computer screen, but we are creating networking opportunities across the country. We are doing over 150 different meetups between now and the actual event across all of our groups. So if you want some of that in-person networking locally, you don't even have to go anywhere. Just drive down the street to a local, restaurant. Go to the multifamilyinvestornation.com, click on the little meetup icon. It'll bring you to the page for meetup. You can see all the groups that are there, and you can have some of that in-person networking. But as far as the other events that are happening in 2019, we will be posting on the closed Facebook group. So if you're not part of that, make sure you go there on Facebook and join it. On the closed Facebook group, we will be posting some of the events that we will be attending, and so you guys know where we're going to be. And so obviously, my role in my lane in this partnership is investor relations and doing a lot of that networking. And so I'll be most likely going to more events than they'll be going to because they have other things to focus on. But I know we're going to all try to go to as many of these events if at all possible, because just being there is very important. And so I know one that all 3 of us are going to be at is Joe Fairless is coming up. Yep. It's the best ever conference in Denver in February. It's like the end of February, I believe.
Yeah, like 20th, 23rd.
Yep. So I know you can if you want to meet us in person and go to an event like that, we're going to all 3 be there. And so that's one event that we're going to go to, and that's actually, I think, already on the Facebook group. And so we will be posting more of them throughout the year that of events that we're going to be going to, so you guys can kind of follow that, and if you want to kind of follow along with us and join us there, we'd be more than happy to do that.
And I think that's a great segue into kind of our 2019 look ahead. So we talked about a couple of the lessons that we learned from the 2018 year, and we've talked about, one of the goals that we have is going to as many events as possible, meeting new people. And we talked about some strategies on how to meet them and really, go in with an open mind and go and just have a nice conversation with people and see where it goes. That being said, I know we wanted to get into some of the kind of 2019 goals, or, how we set a goal to drive us to achieve that. Brandon, do you want to talk a little bit about setting what we call a pull goal, a goal that, you're pulled towards rather than being pushed at?
Yeah, and so we've talked about this a lot. Setting goals, you need to have a goal for the year, or a motto or something you're pushing for. I think everybody understands that, or at least you should understand that. But where do you set that goal? What's the bar that you're going to set it at? And we talked amongst ourselves about goals that what we call pull us. Okay. And the idea is, you know, if let's say you're a runner or you do triathlon, which I used to do, I've since retired a couple years ago, as you can tell, a little heavier since then. But what I would do is I would just sign up for a race that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. And it would be 6 months out. But I signed up for that race, you know, that cost $700 to sign up for the big Ironmans, you know, something like that. And so what that would do is it would motivate me to be prepared because I've spent the money, I have a calendar date, I have a deadline, and it pulls me to achieve my goal. I'm going to go ahead and commit to that. And I think that it's very important to have that goal. So we are analyzing, what should we do? Just go ahead and take that step and set your goal. We talked about set that goal outside of your comfort zone so that it pulls you outside of your comfort zone. If you're setting goals that are achievable, you're never going to achieve great things. You're going to achieve mediocre things. And then you talked about that with the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. Like you could sit there and analyze and plan and, well, I think we'll do it, but there's a lot to do. So, I mean, we need to push that out. Like
we
next year.
Figure out A to Z first.
Yeah.
Before we get anything scheduled.
Yeah. I definitely did a fire ready aim on that one because with that summit, the moment I decided I wanted to do it, I put the date on the calendar and started to put the pieces in place to get it going.
How many people did you have committed to speak before you scheduled the event?
I think it was just me.
You had one person and it was yourself.
Do you remember the conversation?
Committed.
But I started to promote it and I said 30 plus speakers. So I put my goal of 30 speakers and it pushed me or pulled me really to get 30 speakers. So I was doing everything I could to get 30 speakers and I ended up getting over 55.
I was going to say, so your goal was when you first put the post out there, we're going to have an event in January, we're going to have 30 plus speakers. Now, behind the scenes, you're working crazy to get those speakers lined up. And the nice thing is you already had a date in mind. So either the speaker can do it then or they can't. And so I think it helped you with the scheduling purposes because I think one thing that would tie people up, and as I think about it, it would be, how do I schedule 30 speakers when, you know, I don't have a date yet, and I hope this random weekend in the future works for all 30 people. Well, no, you know, I'm going to get 30 people, whether it's going to be you or you, here's the date. If it works, I've got 2 more speakers. If it doesn't work, I'm going out networking and pulling in some more speakers. So the goal was 30 and you got 55.
Yeah. Did that goal make you feel good? Remember the conversation we were flying to Asheville to go to a meetup, and Dan, you know, told us what his idea was, and he wanted to do it in January, and we're like, I know my reaction. Maybe you weren't that way, but I was like,
this was what, November?
Like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of work, right? So uncomfortable. That sounds uncomfortable. But that goal was set, and now granted, he's doing all the work with that. That's his lane.
Yeah.
But thinking about that, you know, just it was a big goal. It's fast, but
well, and what were a couple of like surprising things that you learned in getting to that goal? And really, you got pulled outside of your comfort zone, right? To put the event on, line up 55 plus speakers, and I don't know, hundreds, thousands of attendees. What was something that you learned that you didn't maybe anticipate because it was, you know, outside of the normal that you were used to prior to?
I would say that the thing that, as far as like the speakers are concerned, I set the goal at 30, and I thought that was going to be hard to achieve. And the hardest thing about getting the speakers was explaining to them what the event was. Because this industry has never had an event like this. I mean, they have this type of an event, but this industry has never been done, right? Not that I can recall.
Sure.
And to have I don't think you would even be able to have this type of an event or any type of an event with this level of speakers without somebody kind of pulling people into the event, right? And there were several speakers that, you know, I reached out to that declined speaking because they were doing something else. Okay. And sometimes I looked at that now and I kind of sat back and I was like, I'd go like look up what they were doing that weekend or whatever. Like it's a 3-day event and you can't break away for 75 minutes to speak to our group. And because it benefits them, because it's getting them in front of a lot of people,
right.
Hundreds of people
that they haven't met before.
And some of them they might have, but it's all about being present, right? Yep. And so I'd get a little frustrated with that. You know, I'd be like, seriously? And then you just talk to a speaker that's going on vacation to the Bahamas, and he's carving out 75 minutes to speak from the Bahamas.
Yeah.
You know, and so you also look at that. I looked at that and I was like, well, I mean, obviously everybody's a little bit different. I try not to take offense to it, right? And just look at it and go, okay, well, maybe next time, right? Yeah. And obviously, you know, when you're putting an event together like this, there are a lot of moving parts. But one of the things I've done with my other businesses that I have is I've delegated a lot of things. I think the art of delegation is a very key thing when you're trying to scale and you're trying to grow. And that's one of the things that I had to do very quickly in this and putting this on is learning to delegate, because I couldn't continue to do webinars every week and go to events and, you know, raise money for our 2 deals that we just closed recently and, you know, do all this other stuff, plus put on this large event. And so I think that delegation was one of the biggest things that kind of came back to me, because I've done it before, but I was trying to do all of it in the beginning and I was like, I can't do this. This is just way too much. So being able to delegate that, and some of you might be shocked, but I have one person in addition to myself that is putting on the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. So, I mean, obviously you guys are going to be helping out with some of the technology in the back end and speaking and stuff like that. But it's been one of those things that's been really exciting to kind of see everybody coming together. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, are you know, have given me some feedback about, I don't know how you did it, but you pulled everybody together. You got a great lineup of speakers and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but.
Well, yeah, I would just jump in and say, yes, that does help. And, you know, I think the takeaway was the appreciation of delegation and how you had to kind of revisit that, because, you know, I look at it and, you know, I'm grateful that you've got the event going on. I think I helped with the event by sending maybe a handful of emails to some speakers that you and I both know and I may have a relationship with to get that set up. But other than that, you know, that was completely your lane and getting us to the event and everything. And the reason for my gratitude for that is because I know it's going to help the business, but it also allowed us at the same time, we had a couple of deals that we were closing. We had some money raising activities going on. And so I think that is critically important, that delegation aspect, to recognize, you know, I can't do it all. I also have, you know, a family, you know, other people to take care of and be involved with, and it's just vitally important. And I know I interrupted Brandon, so.
Oh, no. What I was going to point out was you mentioned the great lineup of speakers, and one thing that we've discussed is the collaboration of everyone together, because we've used the term a buyer's a buyer's a buyer. You know, like there's people out there. Don't hoard your knowledge to yourself. Don't, you know, your little group or this little group. Let's all, you know, we're all in the same space. Let's share our knowledge. Let's talk about it. You know, we don't need to be in little cliques or little this. Let's get this great lineup of speakers and let's share the knowledge that we have, because your market's your market and my market's my market. There's plenty out there for all of us. That's, I think, an important thing that's happening here that you have not seen elsewhere.
And I think, you know, that really triggers one of my kind of daily goals that I've always had for myself. And, you know, I can't pinpoint the day that it took effect in my brain, but also in my heart. But every single day, it is my duty to grow and learn something new. And it could be the smallest thing of just how to do this better, or a new trick on the computer that I didn't know before, or, you know, learning something that Sam Walton has done from his book that I can take and either appreciate and apply, or, you know, how I can just be a better human or a better husband, or, you know, just a better person in the community. And so, you know, I think you're right that it is a growth base, and how this community and the community that we're developing can really learn and grow together, and we can all improve and better the world around us, and just be better humans.
It's about making that conscious decision to learn something new, because we're always learning. So everybody learns something new every day, right? I mean, you do. It's just whether you're actually acknowledging what you learned, and then because if you do that, then you know what you've learned and now you can apply it. But if you're just passively going throughout life, and you are assimilating knowledge, but you're not actually making a conscious thing like, oh, I just learned that. Now, where can I use that? That's the idea that you're getting at, like making that conscious decision to look for those things.
So we have a couple of questions that have come in. So I'm going to go ahead and cover some of these questions. And I guess we probably should have done this in the beginning, because we always kind of take it for granted that everybody knows who we are. So one of the questions that was submitted was, what are each of our roles in the business? So how about you just go ahead and get us started, Brandon, kind of a brief, minute or two of exactly what you do.
Sure. Well, Dan always asks me, what do you do again? No. So I deal with most of the broker relations and looking at the properties when they're out for listings or going to tour properties. So I'm dealing with speaking with brokers, building that relationship, going back and forth, getting it to the point where we're looking at it. Danny and I start looking at it from a financial standpoint to see if it's worth me going to tour. So that's where I get in there. And then we all work together to collaborate to get it, to purchase. And then once we acquire the property, I'm doing a lot of the budget ahead of time, CapEx budget, what it's going to take to renovate. And then once we acquire the property, working with contractors locally, making sure we have the best prices possible. Because there's different ways you can do it. There's, you can just lean completely on your property management. And there's a lot of people that do that. But with my background in construction, I know that you can, I don't want to use the term wheel and deal, but you can leverage your knowledge of construction. And once they understand what you're talking about, you can get sometimes a better price. Or you can say, well, I'm going to keep you employed for a year. So can you do a little bit better? Because I'm looking at your labor numbers, and, I know what, most, cabinet installers make per year, but I'm providing you with steady income for a year. So what can you do to help me? And I'm going to help you in return. So being hands-on like that is really, I feel, where my value add is. And then the overall construction knowledge that just most people, I take it for granted that I have it sometimes. And people ask me questions, and I'm like, I feel like I'm not giving them a real value, because doesn't everybody know that? But I forget that everybody doesn't know those things.
Yeah, that there's 800 different materials out there.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we, and we work together in those things, but that's my main lane, and we collaborate together. So it's not like I said before, we're not running down a lane with barriers up on either side, blind to what everybody else is doing, but we do not cross that line down here, but we're still talking to each other as we're going down that road. So.
Yeah, so once Brandon kind of looks at the deal, or a broker sends him a new lead, he'll send it to me, and I will evaluate kind of the quick financial numbers at the high level to see, is this, number one, a market that we want to be in? Number two, how do the numbers look for the value add project? Because again, we focus on 150 unit kind of class C to class B multifamily properties built between 1980 and 2005, 2010, but it must have a value add component. And what that means is that we can physically go in and bring in more amenities or upgrade the units, so the future resident will pay a higher rate in rent than they do today. That's that value add component. So we focus on increasing NOI through rent increases, and also expense efficiencies, where we can come in and do things a little bit different than the previous ownership or management team, with our background and the property manager that we use to bring expenses down, and so we can increase NOI. So once I look at the high level numbers and I say, yep, it looks good, I talk to Brandon again, and he'll go out and tour the property. So now we're actually doing our real kind of due diligence, and he'll get construction estimates and bids on how the property condition is, and then he'll report that back, and we'll do a full underwriting analysis, where we get into the very intimate details of the property's financial operations, and we will put that through our underwriting model, to see how it will perform over the next 5 years. And then the three of us come together and collaborate on how do we think this deal will add up for us as investors and our group of investors. Is this something that we think they would be interested in? And is this a good opportunity for them to invest in?
And that's kind of where I come in. Is I'm all about the investor relations. And so I kind of have my hand on the pulse of our investors. And so whenever they have questions about, the deal specifics that they put together, and as we're looking at the underwriting, I kind of give them from a investor's lens what I think is going to be palatable to our investors. So we do sponsor our own deals. We do put together our own deals, and we're also always looking for investors to join us on our deals too. And so I'm constantly talking with investors and meeting with investors and creating that dialogue and starting that conversation. And so I think from what I'm doing is, which is why you see me doing webinars every week and providing a lot of value and a lot of content. We gain a lot of value from investors that find us via doing that, and then they reach out to us and say, hey, I like you, I know you, I trust you. And those are the three things I always talk about is whenever you're looking for investors, you have to get to the point where they know, like, and trust you. And if they don't meet all three of those, most likely they're not going to pull out their wallet and drop $50,000 on a deal that you're putting together. And so, and I think that was one of the key things that allowed us in our most recent deal to be raised $2.5 million, to raise that in just a few short days. And I think that was, and even then we raised it in a few short days, and right at the very last minute we had one investor back out because of some personal issues he was having.
Always growing pain.
Oh, always. There's always issues, right? It's just about having the people in place to fill up those gaps and stuff like that, because we were able to fill that up within a couple of days as well for that one investor that backed out. And so we'd be able to have those backup investors. But I kind of sound like, from what I'm listening to myself, and I'm rambling a little bit. But I think that the goal was to kind of go through and say, all right, Brandon, his goal is finding the next deal. Once we close the deal, working on with the property management, make sure things are being done, boots on the ground type stuff. And that's where he thrives. And Danny is the financial analyst and does the underwriting beforehand, as well as the asset management, post-closing, and all that kind of stuff. Lender relations, everything is that's all his lane, and he does a phenomenal job with it. And then mine is more marketing and investor relations. So whenever we have a deal that's been put together, I take their information that they have and I put it together in our own, an investor packages and summaries that we're sending out to investors. I know how to present it to investors that will make it, a great piece for them to be able to understand all the different moving parts in the business plan and the marketing and the different pieces of the returns and various things like that, and how to present that properly.
You also set up our conference calls, email everybody, handle the communication on that front. So,
and we'll do a webinar and probably in the next couple of weeks on investor relations, that you can actually understand all the different moving parts of what I do on that piece of it as well. And so we try to have a balance on the webinars of different topics and stuff. And a lot of times it's hard when you're creating webinars because you think everybody knows what you know, and they don't necessarily know that.
One thing I wanted to point out, that when we were discussing what our roles are, when we are looking at a deal to put in an LOI, it's so important to have those different roles and strengths, because everybody has a viewpoint or a lens. And how many times have we discussed a deal and had a certain viewpoint, but then we talked to Dan, and it changes our viewpoints, because now we're not looking at, like, I'm looking at a construction cost, you're looking at maybe saving money, because your three aspects of value add are spend money to make money, save money to make money, or just make more money because they're not market rent. So I'm looking at spending money to make money, you're looking at saving money, and then we put all that together, but then we got to add the component of, is this a good investment? Like, are we able to make this profitable for our investors? Because that's the most important thing. So it's taking that information and our different viewpoints, and it's like lenses. Like, you have one lens and it magnifies the product, and then you take another lens and it's magnified even more, and then a third one, and it's laser focused on that property and what you need to do. And it takes those different lanes, those different viewpoints to accomplish that.
So speaking of your lane, there's a question that came in here that would be great for your lane.
Okay.
So this person, this is Vince. Hi, Vince. Thanks for joining us. He has a question about driving for dollars. So obviously, I'm going to have you answer this question because it's kind of up in your lane and up your alley. So he says, when you first started, did you do any driving for dollars to try to find deals? And then what is the exact process that you use for reaching out to those owners that you find with driving for dollars?
Okay. So the first thing that you want to identify is what kind of space you're in. Are you looking at single family, fix and flip, duplex, quadplex, under 50, so you have to identify what space you're in, because that's going to affect your deal flow and how you come across that. Because once you get into the space where we are at, the over 100, there is no driving for dollars. There is broker relations. Now, did we do that starting out when we were kind of learning? I know Dan and I did. We toured, like 15, 20 properties up in Charlotte, just driving around trying to find out who the owner was. We found that to be very unproductive for us in the space we are working in, because it's not set up that way. So what we do is we set up meetings with brokers. We're in Columbia, so Charlotte's very close, Atlanta's very close. We'll go down to Orlando and we'll set up meetings with the different firms and their local brokers to put a face with a name, handshake, coffee. They want to know our credibility. Are we actually going to buy a deal, or are you just, kind of just talking big? Because they don't want to waste their time with you if you're not going to actually buy a property. I say that candidly. That's the way it works. You have to be serious. They have to have credibility.
Yeah. What I would say is, if you're looking to do a large multifamily deal, 100, 150 units plus, it is very unlikely that you are going to get a deal by driving for dollars. Like Brandon said, you're going to get the deal from a relationship, either with the owner, if you meet them and you get a relationship through them, or through the broker that's going to list the property. Because with the large multifamilies, they are all based on relationships. The owner's going to sell with the broker they know, and so on and so forth. By way of background, I have done a variety of real estate investing prior to focusing now on just solely multifamily. I have driven for dollars. I have successfully completed a drive for dollars into a short sale, renovation, flip, and a sale. Through that, I learned a lot along the way, and how that is not the best use of my time, and it's really focused on multifamily at this point. But when I did that, my wife and I, we would just go out, drive a neighborhood, look for a house with some overgrown stuff, get online, find the owner of the property or whomever is in control of that asset, and then try to reach out to them. Again, it comes back to relationship. So we had to convince the owner of the property to go through and do a short sale, because they would have been going down the foreclosure path. So we were able to come in, help them out, and avoid foreclosure to get that property in order for us to renovate it. And the neighbors in the community really appreciated it, because it was an eyesore for that particular neighborhood. And I think it was just a great win-win. So yes, you can drive for dollars, identify the owner, get online, search the public records to do that, and reach out and, again, build a relationship so you can buy that property and turn it into what you want.
Well, and the relationship thing is the aspect that's common amongst, no matter what process you're doing.
Yeah.
The know, like, and trust as well. If you have to get to know a property owner, you have to contact them. They have to like you. If you just come up, if they don't like you, you kind of rub them the wrong way. If you're driving for dollars and you come across an owner, why are they going to bother with you? And they have to trust you that you have their interest at heart, and as well as your own. Obviously, it's a business transaction. But it's about relationship, even at that level, the single family. And on up, when you have a bigger property, and let's say you've worked with a seller or an owner before, and he has another property, and he was super pleased, or they were super pleased, the group, the REIT, or whoever has the property, with the closing and how smooth it went. And no hiccups and everything. And so the next time they have a property come up, hey, let's call these guys up, because
I'm calling Brandon.
Yeah, it's so easy, man.
Yep.
And I just want easy money, and I just want this thing out of my hair. Let's call them up. So
we know they're going to do what they say because we trust them.
Right. And that comes from learning not to overcommit yourself. You have to value your word, right? You can't, oh yeah, I want to get this, and then it falls through, and then you put them through hassle and extra hoops. Now they don't want to deal with you. Now you're not going to, not only are they not going to call you, if you did bid on that property that they own later on, they're not going to award it to you because why? That's a hassle, right?
Yeah.
So it's relationships, know, like, and trust. It matters to that.
Yeah.
All aspects.
Well, last comment for Vince, coming back to your question, driving for dollars. Yes, you can drive for dollars on a single family. Yes, I have had friends who have driven for dollars with mid-size apartments, maybe like the 10 to 50 or 60 units, but typically those are going to be in your secondary or tertiary markets. You're probably not going to find a 50 unit apartment in San Francisco by driving for dollars. It'll kind of be those rural markets, but the same process. Use the public information online to find the owner, contact them, build a relationship, talk to them about selling.
So the next question that has come in is about the lender requirements for deals. So the question here was from Cheryl, and she says, how common is it for a lender to require specific liquidity or net worth requirements for the sponsor? And would you go with another lender or find a co-sponsor? And what's the best way about going about doing that?
I mean, that's definitely good.
Yes, the lenders always require liquidity and net worth for you to be a sponsor or the general partner or a key principal. Those words are kind of interchangeable when it comes to the lender.
Is that just non-recourse, or is it both non-recourse and recourse? Like if it's a local bank, do they always require net worth and liquidity?
If it's a smaller deal where you're going to go to a local bank, I'm going to say below $2 million in the loan amount, you may go to a local community bank, and they're going to want to look at your balance sheet and net worth. They'll have you fill out what's called a PFS, personal financial statement, and every community or local bank or lender is a little bit different. So they will have some sort of net worth and liquidity requirement in order for you to close. I don't know what every community bank has. So above 2 million, I would say you need to go with a national lender. Typically all the people are out of New York. There's several lenders that we like to work with, but they always have a net worth and liquidity standard that you need to meet. And so typically on a loan, let's just say it's a $10 million loan, your net worth of your key principals that are signing on the note need to have a combined net worth of 10 million, and you need to have a liquidity of roughly 10% of the total deal. So $1 million roughly. Those are kind of rough rules of thumb. But again, talk to a few different lenders and they will have maybe some different liquidity or net worth requirements, but you will always need to bring that to the table in order to get a deal done.
So the other question, there's one question here about from Eric about starting your own multifamily investor nation meetup group in your own area. So if for some reason there is not a meetup group in your area, then you can send me over an email at dan@multifamilyinvestornation.com and let me know that you're interested, and I'll make sure that you become a co-organizer. We can jump on a phone call and talk a little bit about what our goals are with the group. And even if there is a group that is meeting and already started in your area and you want to do some meetups on your own with that group, you can still send me an email and let me know, because I think there's a lot of areas that we could do more than just one a month or whatever in a market. I'd be fine if we did one a week or multiple times during the week, because the more opportunities you have and network and get out there, the better it is for you as well as other people in your community.
And Dan, your email is all spelled out, right? There's no MFIN. It's multifamilyinvestornation.com.
Right, that's correct. The next question is about it's from Jamie Arnold again, and he said, with the growth that you guys experienced in 2018 with building your team, what would you recommend doing before interviewing a new member, for example, the CPA you want to work with? Any tips from lessons learned in 2018?
on working with a CPA specifically, I would just kind of reach out and have an intro call with them. I would always ask for a reference or two that you can call and speak to. And I just did this recently. I spoke to the reference because I specifically wanted to know the CPA's experience and ability and track record with real estate and how well they've done for their clients in that space. So ask them about real estate and ask them about a reference.
Yeah. One thing that I'll add to that is economies of scale in like a CPA standpoint. Like the less times you touch something, the more efficient it is. You know, every time you pick something up and set it back down, you're wasting time. So we've seen this with CPA groups. Like if you have somebody doing the cost seg study, but they also offer CPA services for your community or for, and even personal, it all trickles down because they already have this in front of them. So it's real easy for them to transfer that data into doing the accounting work on the property, and then even maybe into your own personal if you decide to do that. So those are things to take into consideration.
Well, and even with the attorneys, you know, we were at the beginning, we're thinking we're gonna have to have two different attorneys, an SEC attorney and a real estate attorney. And the group that we're using for real estate in South Carolina also works in North Carolina and Tennessee, and I think Georgia and Florida and whatever, but they also have the ability to do the requirements for the SEC as well. So they have that SEC, you know, legal team that they can help. So that's all in one piece instead of having to go back and forth to different groups. So Vince has another question here. I'm gonna go. I'll just read it through here. So we have a few more minutes. So I want to make sure we give everybody opportunity to ask questions. Obviously, we don't want this to go too long because we're still in the middle of our planning session ourselves this weekend. So we don't want to take too much of your time either. So Brandon has a question here that is, what is the timing of your next deal that you'll have available with for your group of investors? And can you discuss any details on this, market, number of units, etc.? What's your goal this year in regards to the number of deals you would like to close on and open up to your investment group? And is that property in Amelia Island, Florida yours? And if so, what are your thoughts on AirBNB investments, the process, average returns, and etc.? So
those are all things that we've discussed, like what our goal is for this year. AirBNB investments, we've had all these conversations. So it's like you just like, are you listening? You know, because like,
he has like a little microphone.
Yeah, what's going on here? So what is our goal, Danny, for this year for property?
Properties, we're going to do 100 million in acquisitions. So that's going to be across 5 or 6 different properties in that price range of around $15 to $20 million per each deal. So that leads me to the second question in there about when would we have an opportunity coming up. We'll be submitting an LOI for a property in South Carolina that we have a very high probability to be awarded. That offer will be submitted in the middle of January, and we would expect to have a PSA signed and executed by the end of January, and we would close on it. So we would be, you know, pushing out the investment opportunity in February and probably closing at the end of March. So that's something to look out for.
And how can they reach out to us if they're possibly interested in, you know, passively investing or anything like that? Yeah,
if you're interested in passively investing in one of our opportunities coming up, join the mailing list. Go to passiveinvesting.com and fill out the investor form, and that'll get you on the list. And then once we have a deal under contract and we're ready and committed to close on it, we then send out a, you know, probably about a 50-page slide deck for you to review with all of the investment information, the details on the return, the details on the property, some property photos, so you have a chance to look at everything. So again, go to passiveinvesting.com and just submit your information, and we'll be sure to include you when we have our next opportunity ready to go, probably at the end of January.
So how did you get passiveinvesting.com?
You know, we are
a lot of people have asked us that. Let's go ahead and answer it.
We are very excited about having the domain www.passiveinvesting.com. We were able to secure the domain for an undisclosed amount of money through the internet. It's a great.
It wasn't a $12.99 domain.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't apply for a 30% discount, but we are very excited that we secured that domain.
Although we did negotiate them down a little bit, so
there was negotiation involved, and yes,
it was about 30%, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we were excited.
It wasn't GoDaddy.
No, it wasn't GoDaddy.
Yeah. But yeah, go to passiveinvesting.com. The way we got it is, through diligence and finding out who the owner was and figuring out what they wanted and agreeing on an undisclosed sum of money to purchase that domain.
I want to touch on the other question about, is this property ours, and what do you feel about Airbnb? Because this is a discussion that we had. Danny, you have some Airbnb properties.
Yep.
And so I have always, wanted to have beach property and Airbnb it, with the idea that I could have a beach house and the Airbnb would provide the income for that, right? And so Danny and I discussed that, in that he has experience on that.
He set you straight, didn't he?
He did. And it really makes sense. And that's why you collaborate. That's why you discuss, right? Because you have a viewpoint that you think is correct, but he has a different viewpoint because he has a different experience. So together, he can tell me what his experience is, and I can either say, oh, but I don't think that's a big deal for me, and so I'm just going to do it anyways, or I can say, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not going to do that. So on that, like on a high level, what are your thoughts on that? First of all, we are renting this out.
This is an Airbnb. So
yeah,
actually, it's a home away.
Home away.
Yeah. So as I said, I've got a varying background. Before I got started in doing just multifamily going forward, I've done commercial real estate. The first property that my wife and I purchased by ourselves was a $1 million commercial office building. And then we proceeded to buy a couple more office buildings. We bought a small multifamily unit, a 4-unit. We purchased some beachfront AirbNBs. We've done some condos at the foreclosure sale. We've done that short sale. So what I like to say is I've got a variety of experience in various asset classes, and I've been able to learn through experience what each of those asset classes bring in terms of work from the ownership side, and how you can scale or can't scale with varying types of properties, be it small beachfront Airbnb houses or beachfront condos. And the reason why I have now solely focused on multifamily is because the scale is there and the ability to have economies of scale and efficiencies to control your expenses and control your income. From a standalone one beachfront Airbnb house, if you think you're going to buy it and use it for 2 weeks as vacation, I'm going to say when you go away to the property for the 2 weeks, you're going to probably putz around a little bit and, fix some things here and there, clean out the pool, pick up the leaves, brush the sand out. So you're going to be working when you think you're going to go away for 2 weeks. The other piece to it is when you stay for 2 weeks, you've just reduced your income. The other piece from the Airbnb side of things is owning that one single house. You can predict your highest possible income, but your expenses may be unknown. And the other piece to think about is, from an income perspective, if you can look at the entire year, you know how much you're going to make. Well, there's going to be unforeseen events that come up that will reduce your income, right? A hurricane or a state of emergency comes through and you have to cancel your bookings for 2 weeks out of the year. And so you're going to stay there for 2. So you were at 52 possible nights or 52 weeks, and now you're down to 48. And then somebody cancels because they had an emergency sickness in the family and they can't come down. And so you cancel and refund their booking there. So it's unpredictable. It is certainly an opportunity and a way to make money and enjoy a free vacation, because likely your Airbnb property should generate enough income to pay for all of the annual expenses. and you can go and stay for a couple of weeks throughout that time period. But you can look at the income and your expenses and figure out how much money that you have the potential to make. And then just know that that income, if you're going to make $30,000 in cash flow from that property, it could really be more like 20 or 15, but your income and your potential value is really capped. And so it's not scalable and compared to multifamily. But if you want to be actively involved and run Airbnbs and talk to all of your guests and communicate with them and do a lot of work to manage that property, and your goal is to have, 5 or 10 of them, you could certainly make a nice annual income from those combined, but you're going to be working really hard to manage those. And if you don't want to do the management and be more passive, you're going to be paying a hefty management fee. So now your income is going to be reduced from that standpoint.
So I think the gist of what we discussed was you have capital that's tied up in a property. That return on the capital compared to multifamily is very minimal. So in that sense, if you had to choose between multifamily and Airbnb, obviously multifamily. The amount of capital and the return on that investment is very small compared. Plus, you can't scale it like you can multifamily. Plus, it's more person-based. You're dealing with the actual tenant, whereas in syndication, we have property managers. You're not having to deal with that. You're dealing with it on a business level. And the headspace, it's just taking up all your time. It's just very hands-on, very down in the trenches, if you will. And what you could do instead of that, everybody said, I think it's more about owning beach property. I think in our head sometimes it's like, oh, I want to have a beach house. Really, it's about staying, right, to enjoy it. If you want to have a beach house because you want to enjoy it, it'd be a lot easier just to go and stay at someone else's Airbnb and enjoy it and leave and not have to clean it or fix the pool.
You rent it, you go and you stay for the week and you
go
pack
home.
Your stuff up and you go home and you're not too worried about the scratches on the wall because the picture got knocked off, right? Yeah. Or the sand that is on the floor and, you're kind of just working through it.
If you want a beach house, make enough money so you can have a beach house for yourself.
Right, right.
So we are about 7 minutes past 11 o'clock, and I have a couple of other questions that have come through here. So instead of elaborating on them a lot and stuff like that, let's just do some rapid fire questions, just like one-liner, answer it, and we'll move on to the next question.
Okay.
And that way we can wrap a lot of these questions up pretty quickly. So this was a question I would direct to Brandon from Vince again. He's asking about RUBS. Would you prefer RUBS as opposed to submetering? And how does that work with tenants and approval for tenants? And did you have any complaints and stuff like that? So basically, would you prefer submetering or RUBS?
Well, the question.
60 seconds. Go.
Yeah. So the question is, from a property management standpoint or from a tenant standpoint. So tenants tend to like submetering better because it's an accurate representation of their water usage, right? As opposed to calculating it based on the square footage or things like that. So you get less kickback from submetering. I think I like submetering better. I think property managers, our property management, and like in Greenville, they don't like RUBS. And so from a standpoint, if you can do submetering, if that's possible, do that. If you can't, do RUBS.
Obviously, there's a cost analysis that you have to do with that too, to see does it make sense financially. And then there's also sometimes some city limitations that don't allow you to submeter certain utilities as well. So that's one of the things I think in Greenville County where we have a property is they don't even allow you to submeter the water at all.
Right.
It's
so
all
check your local codes to make sure what you're allowed to do, but I prefer submetering. So
next question here is, how do you find investors for funding? I'll answer that one. So one of the best ways that you can actually find investors is getting out there, networking and meeting people, whether that's going to a local meetup group for real estate investors or going to local executive clubs and finding investors. And then also showing up to the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit coming up in a couple of weeks. You can go to Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. Excuse me, wait. No, you can't go there. You can go to mfinsummit.com. So go to mfinsummit.com, check out the lineup of the speakers, and if you register today, we'll give you $100 off by using the coupon code New Year, all one word. It doesn't matter if it's upper or lowercase, just all one word, New Year. and it'll give you $100 off your ticket. And the prices of the tickets will be going up again on Monday. So that's January 7th. So make sure you go there, register, and grab your ticket. Next question. If I am buying a property with 5 additional investors, would it require syndication filings, or is there another way to do the deal? The other investors are private lenders, no equity position. So I would direct that to you, Whitney.
No equity position. I don't. You need to talk to your real estate attorney who's helping you close the deal on their suggestion. We're not attorneys. We're not giving legal advice here. But I don't think you would have to do a syndication with an SEC filing that includes a PPM, a private placement memorandum, which basically outlines the investment terms, the risks involved, the opportunity for profit, the opportunity for loss, and the complete loss of your investment should anything go wrong, and if there's a capital call. So talk to your local attorney. I think you can structure it in a safe and appropriately legal manner without needing to do an SEC syndication. It's also up to these, you said private lenders.
There'd be a mortgage in place then.
Yeah, so they should be able to securitize their investment, which is their loan to you, in a probably second position lien against the property, so they're not even your partner and thus would require no PPM. But again, talk to your local attorney and make sure that you can do that in your state.
So that'd be like a joint venture in that sense if you're not doing a syndication. Just joint venture, but the other partners would have some say in what's going on. That's the difference between GP, LP, and JV.
It depends on the lender's loan agreement terms with it, because it doesn't sound like they're an equity participant, but a debt participant.
Yeah, it depends on which side of it on. Next question is, how do you find a co-sponsor for maybe meeting net worth and liquidity requirements?
Same way you meet investors.
Getting out there, networking, meeting people. If you, we're interested in having a conversation with you about that. Obviously, we vet all the sponsors and the co-sponsors that we work with. So we do have the ability to do some co-sponsoring. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me over an email, Dan at Multifamily Investor Nation, and we can jump on a call. Next question, are you guys close to Miami, and are you doing any events in Miami, any meetup groups? Yes. Well, no, we're not close to Miami. And then, yes, we are doing some meetups. So we actually just started a meetup group in Miami. Just got approved actually just now. So my phone I was swiping away those little alerts, and we were getting alerts that meetup group was just approved. So you can go to the multifamilyinvestornation.com, click on the meetup icon there, and you'll see the group there on the map, the interactive map. Next question is, can you briefly discuss how you handle a typical call with a potential new accredited investor? I'll do a webinar on that coming up. So that's a little bit more of a detailed question. I don't really have a lot of time to answer that question. To provide value to established sponsors, what are the pros and cons of being a bird dog versus a capital raiser? Well, let's do a webinar on that one too. I think there's a lot of nuances to that we can talk about. So I'm not trying, we said that it was going to be about an hour long, and so we're about an hour and 15. So all the questions so far have been answered. The last question on here that I'm going to answer is from Mario. Mario says, how do I get started? And the answer to that, I would say, is get out, networking, meet people, but also register for the summit coming up. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to fly anywhere. No travel expenses. You can go to mfinsummit.com, use the promo code New Year, all one word, no upper or lowercase, doesn't matter, and get $100 off the ticket just because you came to the webinar today and watched us. So the ticket prices are going up again on Monday. So I would suggest you go in there right now and getting your ticket. And there's going to be so much content and value about how to get started. Because that question is a very detailed question and lots of different pieces and nuances to it. But I would definitely suggest you go in there. And obviously, if any of you are on here and you want to have a conversation with me or any one of us, you can shoot us over an email. Just shoot me an email, Dan at multifamilyinvestornation.com, and we will definitely jump on a call with you and then see if there's something we can do to help you, because we're here to help and here to provide value at the same time.
Yeah, and the last thing for Mario, how do you get started? And do this right now. Pull out a notepad and a pen, shut down your technology, and start to write down your goal of what you want to achieve. Whether you want to buy one single family rental or you want to buy a 150 unit apartment complex, write down what that goal is, and then what steps do you need to take to achieve that? Do you know the ins and outs of all real estate? Or would one of your supporting goals be to read a book on how to invest in real estate, or read a book on how to buy apartment communities, or go online and learn, or go back and watch previous webinars that we've done about specific underwriting techniques, because maybe you're very knowledgeable, but you need to figure out how you underwrite deals and validate expenses. So sheet of paper, pen, put your technology away, write down what you want to achieve. And that's going to force you to really think through, what do you need to do to achieve that? And what steps do you need to take? Do you need to learn? Do you need to network? Do you need to meet more people? Do you need to meet lenders? Do you need to meet brokers?
Well, I'll add to that. And a lot of times I'll see a mistake people make is endless learning. So set your goal, figure out what you need to do to learn to get started. But the key to getting started is starting, right? So there are people out there that will go to conference after conference after conference after conference every year and will never ever buy a property because they don't know everything they possibly can about it. Will you ever know everything there is to know about real estate investing? Will you know everything? Will any of us know it all?
It's a constant learning process.
It's a constant learning process. And what is the best way to learn?
Through doing.
Hands-on. So learn, don't jump out without any knowledge, but start by starting. Take action. And I think that's the biggest thing I can say.
So I just closed out my Q&A box, and I saw in the chat box that there was a couple questions that came through. I'm going to add, I'll do one question because I know it looks like Joseph was asking this question and we haven't answered it yet. It's a very easy one to answer. The question was about what software program we use for evaluating a deal.
We use a software called Airtable, and just Google Airtable and you'll get that. Airtable is an interactive Google spreadsheet or Google Sheet, Excel form, and kind of CRM all in one. And so we communicate through that platform and it keeps us organized. And then specifically how we evaluate deals, we use an Excel underwriting model to review the financial information, but then we use Airtable to compile, thank you, and collaborate, compile and collaborate in that, and so we stay organized. And the other benefit to using Airtable is if something were to happen to me today, all of my notes and information are available for these two guys to use. And so, hopefully while I'm out, they can cover me until I'm back. If something happens, if I get injured and I'm in the hospital for a couple of days, we can't have a disruption in the business. And so using Airtable, a platform where you can combine all of our information and collaborate on it, is available to you.
Well, and then the Excel spreadsheet that we use to actually do all of our underwriting and stuff like that. If you register for the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit and you purchase the VIP upgrade, you get a VIP toolkit, and it actually includes that underwriting spreadsheet and a tool that we use, along with some videos kind of training you and showing you exactly how to use that. So that's a very vital thing that I think a lot of people don't really think about as much until they get to the point of analyzing the deal. But having that piece right there is very important. So they can definitely get access to it. Just register for the summit, and we're glad to do that. So thank you guys so much for joining us here, spending a couple of about an hour and 20 minutes with us here on a Saturday morning. We really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you guys at the upcoming Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. Hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.